Today I will be installing R171 seats in my R170. Biggest issue you have when you're switching from one to the other is how they're controlled. This is the factory controls for the R170. As you see, it gets power from the fuse, which is also a control module in itself, or a relay. But regardless, you still have power and ground fed to the seat switch, and then the seat switch itself is what delivers power to the seat motors. On the 171, however, it's vastly different. You have power and ground and CAN sent to a control module, and then the control module sends the power out to the seat control motors. You do have a switch, but this switch I don't believe is intended on carrying load or anything. There's no power provided to the switch. The switch just sends a signal to the control module. So how do we fix that? Well, actually turns out that the 164 seat switch and the R171 are very, very, very similar. Matter of fact, they mount in the same position. This is the 171 seat switch. It's got one plug, and that's for getting your seat signal for your seat position. And this is the 164. As you can see, the actual mounting holes are the same. This one's broken, but regardless, they are the same. The plug on the bottom is actually the same. What's different is this one, like I was saying earlier, this is not a powered switch. All right, this is a powered switch. You're going to hear the difference in the switch. You see, it's not very tactile or anything. I mean, you feel it, but this one, it's almost like that's got a built-in relay inside there, which actually will direct the power to where we need to go. So, a couple issues. Obviously, our seat trim is cut out for seat memory. So you can actually just pop the switch off and you can transfer it. It won't hold in there. However, what I've done on my other side, I actually went in the back. I did all these screws. There's a screw underneath this plate right here, or a sticker. And you can actually switch the face of this with that. And you can keep the electronics out of this one, and you keep the back out of this one. And it will all swap over and it all works. That way your buttons aren't loose and it'll fit in there just fine. It looks completely factory. The only difference is that this is just basically a dead switch, but it won't sit there and rattle on you. And you will have a powered switch then. Then after that, what you have to do is you have to go to the switch. This is a 164 wiring diagram. And you actually go from the switch, these are your pinouts, and then these are your motors. So you go from your switch, you get to the correct pin, and then you go to the correct motor. And what I did is I basically went back and forth between right here, connector 5, pin 10 and 12, and that's for motor 27/2. And I went to 27/2, and that correlates to pin 10 and 9. So what I would do is go from pin 10 and 9 here, and then this is the 171 seat. This is connector 5 right here. So then I would go from pins 10 and 12. So I'd find 10 and 12, right there, 10 and 12. And then I would just wire those to this switch. And this is the factory switch. I'll basically remove all this, and I will be replacing it with my own harness that I make. And then as far as how you power this, it's very simple. This is the 164. All you do is you provide it ground is circuit 31, so that'd be pins 2 and 4. 15 circuit is key on power, which is pins 1 and 3. So all I really need to do is this is powered when the car energizes the seat relay, and I'll just wire out of the car the power wire to my 15 circuit here, and then obviously I'll just ground that to that. And that will work. I'll pick you guys back up after I finish the soldering, and we'll go from there, and I'll kind of show you what I did. Alright, starting the wiring, I have my power and grounds soldered together. Going to a connection, which I will solder this into the vehicle, so that way I can nicely connect it to the car. One thing I don't think I explained earlier is there's actually two different connectors for the different motors. Okay, so you have connector 4, this actually goes to the backrest motor, and all the other motors are controlled by connector 5. So you can get access to these wiring diagrams online, and basically all I'm doing is going from motor, or from the switch to the motor. That's all I'm doing, going back and forth between the switch and the motor and just matching up the wires. But there are two different connectors, okay? There's a 5 and then there's 4, okay? So this is connector 5. There's a lot more wires on here than what you need. So these motors also, they're 4-wire motors. They are power ground, and they actually have Hall effect sensors in there which tell the computers where the position of the motor is. Well, since we're not using computers no more, we actually don't need any of those wiring. So the only thing I'm going to harvest out of this harness right here is the power wires. There's, you know, obviously there's a power and ground, but they do switch polarity as the switch is activated. So half of these wires will not be used at all. I'll just clip them short. We're just going to use the correct ones according to the diagram to each motor. And same thing here. This is for the backrest motor. You can actually tell which ones are which. The smaller gauge wires here, those are for the position. And these larger gauge wires right here is for the actual seat motor itself. So I'm going to cut and solder all these to my switch and my pigtail here. And once I get all that done, I will pick it back up. Okay, now I have all the solders done. I've made my own harness here. This is just for the power to switch. And this harness right here is to supply the switch power from the vehicle. I would caution anybody trying to do this that I would go wire by wire. And also the polarity of the motor and the switch is not, I mean, it should be correct. However, I did have to switch a couple of the ones because I had them wired backwards. So meaning I would push the switch up and the seat would actually go down. So I had to reverse polarity. So I would bench test yours before you finalize and solder. I had a battery here. All you had to do is supply this connector with power and ground, and then the seat works outside of the car. So I would just bench test it. Make sure you get the wires wired in correctly, that way you have the correct direction. And I'm gonna go ahead and put the seat switch on and the trim, and there's a few other little things we need to do before we're ready to install. All right, now I have my seat trim on with my seat switch while the wires route safely so they're not going to be crushed by anything. All right, here's my power in. Now the last thing we really need to do is remove the SRS stuff from the 171 seat, because none of that stuff is actually going to work for us. This is a seatbelt ECR. As you can see, I did get this out of a junkyard, and this one has already been deployed. I will be just swapping over the factory 170 seat buckle over here. So, but I'm going to go ahead and remove this SRS harness. Now, this does have a side airbag, which we are not going to use, obviously. There's a connector down inside there. I will just be disconnecting that connector and just pulling this whole SRS harness out. There are shorting bars inside the airbag, which should keep the airbag from deploying from electrostatic shock or anything like that. So it should be completely safe to have that airbag in there, just not connected. Obviously, with wires connected, it's possible that, you know, something could short. It would be safer just to leave it in there, disconnect it, Or you can fully remove it if that's what you want to do. For me, I'm just going to disconnect it. Okay, with the SRS harness removed, you see the little bars at the top of the connector there? Those are the shorting plates. That's what keeps the airbag from deploying when it's out of the vehicle. So now all I have to do is redo my harness here. This is for the seat back motor. And then the seat will be ready to go in. Here's all the SRS stuff we're removing. Unfortunately, I did get this vehicle, or this seat from the junkyard, and they took the tube off the drive shaft motor, I'm guessing to remove it from the vehicle. So I will have to get one of those before I install it in the vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and tidy this harness up, and we'll see you here in a minute. All right, this is actually the passenger seat. This is what I started with, but I did the exact same thing. Whereas I took the switch, I disassembled it. This, unfortunately, mine was broken, but it is what it is. This is non-functional anyway. But I swapped out the 164 seat switch for the 171. And then I wired it all and soldered it all to the seat motors here, just like I did the other one. The biggest difference between the passenger and the driver side was on 171s, they had a weight sensing sensor in the seat here. That's what this tube is. And I was just about to cut it when I realized, I started looking at it, looks like it's fluid filled. And I wasn't sure if I cut it, if it was going to cause a void in the seat. So I just left it. I just have it disconnected. There's like a plastic bracket and I think like a little control module or something. I just removed all that stuff. I just left this down here. It's just going to sit underneath my seat. This red connector is actually for the seat belt. This is the factory 171 seat belt. As you can see, it still bolts up. Everything is going to work just fine. And then this is my new power wire. So I can actually go ahead and install this seat in today and get it all bolted in and working. Now it's time to install the passenger seat. So, because it's kind of hard to see, but the bolt holes do line up at the bottom. I have my seatbelt attached. Ignore all this other wiring stuff. I'm in the middle of wiring some other stuff up, wideband O2s and line lock and all that good fun stuff. So here's the seat wiring. This is the connector I added for the seat power. Now, if you want, you could cut the harness off the R170 seat and reuse it and solder it onto your new seat. I just chose not to do it that way. I got a different connector style. This is for your SRS. You do have to have a simulator. The R170s do have a passenger recognition sensor inside the seat cushion itself. So this is one I just got on eBay. It simulates that sensor, so that way the SRS light stays off. This right here is for the stock R170 seat belt buckle. And then this is for seat heater. My car did come with seat heater. Unfortunately, the seat I got does not have it, but it is what it is. So now all we got to do is hook up this stuff. And I need both hands. I'll get back in a second. All right, as you can see, the seat is in there. It's fully bolted in. It's fully working. And I just need to get the part for the driver's side so I can do it. But for right now, it's the exact same process for the driver's side as it was the passenger, other than the weight sensing sensor.